Welcome to our first workshop in a series of workshops about web development, roughly, hosted by Blueprint. I'm joined today by some folks from Blueprint and friends, and so we're just going to start off with some intros, and then we'll jump into the workshop. So, hello, my name is Ethan. I use he, him pronouns, and and the icebreaker is we're all going to share our comfort foods. So, my comfort food is sundubu, which is soft tofu soup that is Korean. It's spicy. I feel like I always have it at least once when I'm sick, and it always just like, I feel like it just clears my head. Like it's like so spicy, it clears everything. So that is my favorite comfort food. Yeah. Let's go to Shannon.
Hi everyone, I'm Shannon. I use she, her pronouns, and my comfort food is eggs. They're really easy to make, so whenever I'm stressed and I'm hungry, like they're very simple, very efficient, and efficiency is good. And My favorite way of eggs is poached, but like I always end up eating them scrambled or sunny side up or in some, you know, more quick way. All about I need food now, so that's what I need.
That's fair.
So
That's fair.
yes, that's that. Um, Wait, am I gonna pick the next person?
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Popcorn
Okay.
style.
Jamie.
Hi, I'm Jolene. I use she, her pronouns. I think my comfort food is toast in like many variations. Specifically, I feel like I eat it with peanut butter a lot. Just very, like Shannon said, it's a great like panic food, very fast, very yummy. Especially with like the Asian like white bread that's like the square. When you toast that, very, very good. Gibson.
Hi, I'm Gibson. He, him pronouns. Comfort food. I have to say is ramen. I don't think there's any other food that I don't go out to get that often that is fat and yummy and something that I would love to eat right now and would make me want to go to sleep afterwards. So, comfort food at its finest. Uh, I'd like to pass it over to Ace.
Hi, I'm Ace. My pronouns are he, him, and my comfort food would be pan-fried pork buns, like balsa. Because I think anytime my mom makes it, it's like we're home. Like she makes it whenever my siblings come home to visit, and it's like really labor and love intensive to make this dish. So that's definitely my comfort food. I think I even had a dream about eating it last night. I'm gonna pass it to Spencer.
Hi, I'm Spencer. Wait, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
My comfort food is samyang, 2 times spicy noodles. Oh, and I use he, him pronouns. But the noodles are very good, and I eat them like probably like once a day because I need a lot of comfort. They're delicious. Is Christopher here?
Yeah.
Okay, so your turn.
So I'm CJ. I use he, him pronouns. And my comfort food is probably like those frosted sugar cookies from like the supermarket.
Oh,
I can like eat like a box of those. Those are really good.
We will return to the workshop as planned without the noise. Yeah, so cool. Thank you everybody for joining us today. A quick note about this workshop. This is the first time we're kind of doing this format where people are going to kind of join in this call, like kind of in a smaller setting. And we're going to be able to basically work towards a project together. I have kind of a rough idea of what I have in mind to teach and for us to talk about and think about. But in general, I'd love for the folks on this call to kind of direct where this workshop goes with questions and anything that you're interested in building. So I'm here to kind of help facilitate that. If you're interested and you're watching this from a live stream or recorded later, there is a form that you can fill out if you're interested in joining us on one of these calls and kind of helping to direct a workshop yourself. So super excited to have you join us there if you're interested in that. And yeah, that will be in the link in the description of the live stream /video, I guess. Cool. So, for those of us in the call, are we ready to start?
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. Cool, cool. Yeah, let's get started. So again, this workshop is titled An Introduction to React, Building a Personal Site. And so kind of what I had in mind was I wanted to motivate, the reasons we use React and the basic principles of React in the context of a project that probably a lot of us have tried to do or want to do roughly, and that is kind of building a personal site just to showcase maybe who you are or the projects you might have worked on. And yeah, we're going to use React to kind of showcase all of that. Before we get started, I'd love to hear about kind of approaches that you might have taken with or without code to kind of tackle this yourself. Like what kind of things have you done to kind of try to build a personal site, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of like the approaches you've tried? So yeah, anybody want to take a stab at that? Any ways you've tried to build a personal site?
For a while, I've been looking around at like different website builders. Like I was like thinking about doing Squarespace for a long time, but ended up never completely pursuing it because I really wanted it to look the way I wanted it to look and have a hand in creating it myself. And the furthest I ever got was starting to prototype some stuff in Figma, but never like touching any front end or anything.
I think for me, I spent a lot of time like looking on the internet for like what would be the best way to approach building a personal website, and then I ended up just like doing it with basic HTML, CSS, and it ended up very messy with a lot of repeated code, and not looking exactly like how I wanted it to turn out. So I think just like there's a lot of volume of tutorials to go through on this topic.
Yeah, I tried doing it on WordPress, and then it was hard to really get like the level of customization that I wanted without like being extremely comfortable with like how WordPress like backend works with the front end and all that. It was just, I don't know.
For sure.
I feel like one of the problems is that there's such a large, like Jolene said, there's such a large volume of tutorials and ways that you can go about making a site that it becomes overwhelming. You'll kind of default to like either what your friends are doing or whatever some tutorial says is the best thing to use.
I think similar to Ace, I looked a lot at like personal, or not even personal, just like formatted context, like Squarespace. I have a lot of familiarity with, but it seems to not be like so personal, but like the reason that you build a website is because you want like other people to like access some sort of information, and that's usually about like an organization. Like you're usually building it for other people so that you can see like the traffic and everything. So it seemed like a lot of the pre-fitted formats like Squarespace are suited for that kind of stuff, and so it seemed like there's not a lot of creativity when it comes to what you want to display. Yeah.
It's definitely it's tricky because on the one hand, all of these kind of existing tools like WordPress, like Squarespace, like they have these really great content editing options, right? Like you want to be able to kind of just edit your website like you would a document, right? And in fairness, that is, I guess, what HTML is supposed to be, but in reality, editing HTML just does not feel like as conducive to like long form content editing as you'd want it to be, right? So if you're making a write-up about a project, more than likely you're using like Google Docs to draft up what you want to say first instead of just writing it in HTML for most people, I'd imagine. But I think one thing that Jolene pointed out that a lot of people do find true is that you end up with like a lot of this repeating stuff. Like you have this HTML page, but like you just want this one, for example, project description and thumbnail to look a certain way. And so you'll just repeat this section, and then you're like, oh wait, I want to add one thing to each of those sections. And so you have two options. You can go and insert that, change to every single one of your little sections, or you can rebuild that section and copy and paste and refill in the content, right? So it's super annoying, right? HTML is not super powerful. I mean, fortunately, it's like nice looking, but it's not yeah, it's not cut out for that kind of repeating or dynamic behavior. So yeah, these are all kind of great ways to enter into this workshop with, because that's exactly the kind of problem that we want to tackle with this kind of project. I just wanted to give a quick thing for the folks joining on live stream. I'm gonna send a link to to the code sandbox that that everybody in this call is starting out with, which is the starter sandbox. So if you want to follow along. But yeah, let me give a quick introduction to what the example project site or personal site that we're building looks like today. Like it's very plain, it's pretty minimal, but here's like a mock-up that I quickly drew out just to mimic like what a personal site looks like. Like, hi, my name is, whatever. I have an image here and some links, and then I have like an about me page, maybe some more text and some images, and then here's a example of a projects page, right? So this is exactly what we were talking about with repeating elements, right? This is an example of a repeating section, like beep boop project, beep boop project, beep boop project. Like this thing is going to repeat across the number of projects that I have. But if I change one element of it, I want it to act like a component. If you're familiar with Figma, I want it to act like if I insert one thing into this section, like I want it to update across all of these, right? Like if I change the text size of this, which I can, I think I made these components. So if I change the text size of this, I want that change to apply to all of my elements, right? I don't want to copy and paste again and again and again. And then for each of these project tiles, we're going to create a separate project page for each of those that have their own little write-up. Okay, does that sound good? So these are kind of like the basics of a personal site, I think, but take it however you'd like, suggest pages. And then, yeah, so how is this tackling the problem that I promised we would tackle? Well, let me go to an example of the finished results that we could end up with, but may not necessarily end up with because, again, you're going to take this whatever direction you'd like. But again, like this is how we're going to tackle this problem. It's going to take a little bit to boot up, but anyone have any thoughts so far as to anything else you'd want to add to a personal site beyond these pages that I've listed here? Any ideas? You can do whatever you want. So I'm just waiting for this sandbox to load, so I'm stalling.
Maybe like the contact me form somewhere in there on the about me page.
Yeah.
One thing that I really want to do is connect this to a shop.
So for example, like maybe like something like this projects page, except we have like we're exhibiting something you can sell, maybe? Is that the idea?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure if it would be an external, like, separate thing or not.
Yeah, like you could have a button right here, right? Purchase. Yeah, like maybe we could, bring in something that has like a small e-commerce bit into the site. That could be cool. Let's see if this is loaded up. Cool, it's loaded up. So here's an example of my site. That's kind of the finished result of this. And like I promised, it has all this stuff. But here's an example of one of these project pages. Oh, it looks like someone has edited it already. But what's interesting about this, that is kind of like a mix of both your own custom like code and whatever customizations you want to make, but with the flexibility of a WordPress or Squarespace. We're going to integrate this little edit button right here. And this edit button actually brings up this side panel where you can live edit the bits that you want to write on the website, right? And then you can just kind of edit the content like you're kind of in a visual editor, like you're in a document editor, which is more kind of, again, conducive to long-form content and drafting, right? And I can save this, and those changes actually persist back to the site, right? So I refresh this, and then it actually is it is the site, right? And so, yeah, and so that's kind of our goal for today. That's what we want to do, is we want to create this and do it all in React. So does that sound good to everybody? Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Great. Yeah, let's get started. Pull up my notes here. Great. All right, we talked about what we're making. All right. Let's all jump into the sandbox. Let's all jump into your sandbox. All right. So, the first thing that I want to call out in the beginning is that kind of like what is all this stuff that showed up without me putting it there? Like, what are we starting out with? So I'm going to walk through a little bit about what the skeleton is and what tools we're using. So, this project structure was actually not me. This is not something that I created. It's a starter project from a tool called Gatsby. And Gatsby is a library. It's like some community project. It's open source that uses React, which is another library, to generate these kinds of sites, right? So React is not typically used for these kinds of use cases, like building personal sites, but we're going to do that today because a library, a tool like Gatsby, made that easier for us. So it's called gatsbyjs.org if you're interested. I will kind of link it in our notes here, gatsbyjs.org. But basically, it's what happens is you will build in React today, but the output will be this site that is super fast, and it has all these like built-in features for you. And one benefit, one useful thing that comes with Gatsby is the ability to plug in things like this edit button. So I do want to also point out that I didn't make this edit button. This is also another tool we're using called Tina CMS, and it integrates particularly well with Gatsby. And Tina CMS is, I'll link that as well. It's a little tool. It's that little widget that you can use to integrate content editing into your site. So we have Gatsby and Tina today. Those are kind of some of the tools we're using. But you came to learn React, so let's talk a little bit about what that is. So to start, I want you to jump into the source folder under the pages folder, okay? So source and then pages. And I want to talk a little bit about what's going on here. You should see a little preview in the right corner with like the real-time result of what's going on in the page. It looks like actually this is not building. Is that happening for the rest of you, or is that just me?
Working for me.
It's not for me.
It's not working for you. Cool. Let me look at Gibson's real quick. Oh, okay, you can start this by refreshing your browser. I'm going to refresh Gibson's here. Gibson's browser. Oh, it's because I think Gibson's sandbox went to sleep. Gibson's sandbox is
Just like me.
falling asleep on us real quick. Okay, here it is. Actually, yours is working. Yours is working for me. So, let's look at this. So, the first two lines are kind of importing things that we need to create this page, right? The first thing is we're importing React, right? So that's React. The next line is we're importing some CSS. Does anybody already know some CSS or like knows like what this generally means? Anybody want to? Yeah.
A little bit.
No.
Cool. Yeah. Do you want to kind of describe that for us?
Describe importing?
Or CSS, or like what we're doing, like why this line is here.
So it's my understanding that we have to import CSS because if we want to change like anything stylistically with the document, we're gonna need CSS. So it's like it's a way of like maintaining like how we want to stylize our different things.
Yeah, exactly. So this line is all about importing a CSS style sheet, we call it. So it's a style sheet, and what that means is the style sheet contains all the rules of how the page should appear. Things like font size, things like color, things like background color. We all define inside of a style sheet. So that is what we're doing here. By default, for example, like this text would not render in sans serif font. Like the default font for all browsers is like something serif, and for most people it's like Times New Roman. So it's super ugly at the beginning. CSS is what changes all of that. CSS is like how you specify any overrides to change the display behavior of your website. Sound good? Cool. Let's jump to this section right under it, which is the home. You see something called const homepage, and then some weird kind of syntax here with some parentheses and braces. Let's ignore all of that for a second. Let's just say that we're storing all of lines 6 through 11 inside of a variable for now. Okay, that's what I'm going to say. We're storing lines 6 through 11 inside of some variable. And does this syntax remind anyone of anything? that you may have seen before, maybe not have seen before?
HTML.
Yeah. This should remind you of HTML. And if you haven't heard of HTML is the kind of way of structuring any document on the web. It is kind of roughly it's just a way of specifying like the skeleton or content of your site, right? So I mentioned that CSS is how everything is styled and how everything visually appears. The rest of this is just the bare bones, like how are things structured? What is the actual content of the page, right? Cool. So yeah, that's what this part is, and I do want to point out though that even though it looks like HTML, because we are in React world, this actually has some different rules than straight HTML, okay? And what I mean by that is this line 6 through 11, it's very easy to think of this as just one string of content, like one string of HTML, but that's not actually what's going on here. React has a special kind of a special kind of language that's like HTML, but we call it JSX, or so JS standing for JavaScript, and then I think the X stands for XML, which is sort of like what HTML is structured after. All that to say, this may look like a string to you of just HTML, but what's really going on here is a bunch of function calls in JavaScript. And let me prove that to you. Let me just give you an example. Okay. So if you jump back over to my screen share here instead of your sandbox, I promise we'll get to actually writing things in a little bit. I just have to set up a little bit of context before we start. So this is a website I like to use to kind of visually explain like why this is not HTML, because that's as straightforward as I can get with this one. Actually, this is just what it'll just show you why. But basically, if I paste all this stuff inside of my web browser in the console here, like I'm going to go ahead and paste this into my browser, there's going to be a syntax error. And the reason this is a syntax error is because this stuff is not actually JavaScript. Like, this is not valid JavaScript. None of this stuff actually represents something that is legal in JavaScript. And so what we need to do, I'm going to look this up instead. Okay. Oh, wow. Something's going wrong here, I think. That's too bad. That's really too bad that I can't load this up here. But basically what's actually going on is every time React encounters one of these things, like this thing that's invalid in JavaScript, it's actually turning it into a function call like react.createElementDiv. Like that's what is actually going on. This is valid JavaScript, this is not. React turns this into this. Okay? Cool. Let's see if it loaded up. Oh, here we go. Perfect. So I actually put something in here already. But all of this stuff actually turns into this under the hood. You don't have to actually understand this. All you have to know is that this is valid JavaScript, this is not. React turns this into this. Sound good? So if I paste this into, oh shoot. Can you still hear me? Okay, I accidentally hit zoom. Anyway, so if I paste this into JavaScript, this all works. This is all fine, with the exception of exports not actually being a valid variable that I've defined. But what I'm saying is that there's no syntax error, right? So this is all valid JavaScript, this is not. So I point that all out just to say that there are some special rules here because this is not JavaScript. This is not something that you can. It's not something that you can expect JavaScript to behave the same way in. Like, for example, like normally I'd be able to do like 3 + 3 here because that's valid JavaScript, right? This might look weird to you, but technically this should work because it's we should be in JavaScript, right? Well, that's not quite how JSX works, because if I want to actually put something, in JavaScript here, I can't evaluate 3 + 3 like this. What I'm going to have to do instead is if I want to evaluate JavaScript and actually perform this addition, what JSX has me do is I have to wrap anything I want to run in JavaScript inside of curly braces, okay? So if I want to actually execute 3 + 3 inside of React or JSX, like this representation of HTML, I'm going to actually have to wrap it in curly braces. And you can see on Gibson's sandbox here, it's now showing 6 instead of 3 + 3, the string, right? And that's a byproduct of wrapping this in curly braces, okay? So I can do whatever I want, whatever is valid JavaScript works inside of curly braces. That's what this is. So you can think of this as let's do JavaScript instead of just like HTML-like syntax. Okay, does that sound good to folks? So yeah, so you can insert these curly braces actually anywhere. or actually most places I should say inside of this. So for example, if I had some variable here called some class name equals test, right? And I wanted to set this div's class name to this variable some class name, I could replace this string with curly braces and write some class name, right? Does that make sense? So I've inserted this test string into this class name attribute. So now this div will have class name test. Sound good? Cool. So one other thing that I'll point out is like just to reinforce this very long point that this is not HTML is that in normal HTML you'd actually say div class equals something, but this is that's class is actually a word that's reserved in the JavaScript language, so we can't say class. If you're used to saying class equals something from writing HTML, you have to replace that with class uppercase name to do this instead in JSX. Okay, that's just another weird quirk. Okay. Actually, anything that you might be used to writing inside of these attributes inside of HTML, if you want to do that in React, the rule of thumb is write the same name, like onClick, for example. That's something you can write in HTML, which is an event handler to do something when you click this element. I have to camel case it. Okay, so if you want to actually do something with onClick in HTML, you're gonna write it in camel case instead. Okay, so that's just a rule of thumb with these kind of with these attribute names that you might be used to doing inside of HTML. Okay, cool. Alrighty, how are we feeling?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, definitely.
So how come we do curly braces like inside the return statement, but we don't do curly braces inside like the homepage function?
Oh yeah, good question. So why don't we do anything here? Like why don't we have curly braces to run any JavaScript here? Is that your question?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the curly braces rule applies whenever we open a tag within JavaScript or within JSX. And what I mean by a tag is like I can actually store React elements within a variable, like const some element equals I'm gonna store a heading element, for example, and I've opened h1 here. So this is the open h1 tag, this is the close h1 tag, and this is totally valid in JSX. This is totally valid. But what I want you to notice is like whenever I actually want to put something inside here, inside of JSX mode, I have to actually use curly braces within the JSX. So the quick answer is whenever you're inside of a JSX element, you have to do this to run any JavaScript. The reason we don't have to do that out here is because we're not in a JSX element yet. Yeah. Cool. So a JSX element always starts with one of these like what are these called? Angle brackets, less than, greater than sign. These angle brackets. So whenever we do this, this is like a signal to you. Oh, we are in JSX land now. So if we're in JSX land, we have to use this. We have to use these curly braces to run any JavaScript or put any JavaScript value in there. Right. What would happen if I do this, by the way? What if I did this? Some element equals this.
Wouldn't it just be some class name?
Right. The literal word some class name would show up inside of some element, right? So in that case, it wouldn't be the word test. It would be some class name, which is not quite what we wanted, right? We wanted the actual value test. Here's a follow-up question. How do I put some element inside of this, inside of the return statement here? Yeah.
Curly brackets.
Yeah, you can totally use curly brackets. Do you want to go ahead and do that actually inside of your sandbox and show us? Here, I'll just paste this stuff in here. You can go for it. Okay, so
No. Nope.
Oh.
Never mind. So like, should I change like maybe your name, or should I just put like a whole other one? Like, do you want it somewhere?
Yeah, we're just trying to put it in the page right now. So feel free to do it however you see fit. Cool. Yeah, this is totally this is definitely a way to do that. Yeah, so what we expect here is now that we've actually placed the variable sum element into our return statement, we see this heading sum class name, not including the variable because we didn't use curly braces up here, but we've placed this element into this group of elements. Cool?
I have a question.
Yeah.
In that case, would that be like is everything is encompassed within that larger div? So in this case, would it be another div and then another header one inside of it because some element has the header one tags?
Yeah, that's right. So you're asking, oh, is there a heading inside of this div inside of this div? Yeah. So if we actually poke into the markup here and we click into this, you can see that's what the structure is. So this is the outermost div. This is the next div, the div that Spencer put right here on line 10, and then here's the heading that we just talked about. Yeah. So another way you can actually do this, if you don't want to wrap it in another div, is you can actually just put it here, right? So you could actually just, you don't have to have another div wrapper. You could, but you don't need to. One thing that I cannot do is I can't do this, right? Why can't I do this?
They're not within the angle bracket.
Right. That's a good call, right? I'm not in angle brackets right now, right? I'm not inside of a JSX element. Yeah. So if I wanted to do this though, if I wanted to put some element inside of, or like next to this div instead of, putting some element inside of this div, React has something called a fragment. I don't use this super often, but you can actually wrap something inside of some kind of element by specifying an empty element, and we call this a fragment. So it'll put these elements next to each other instead. But this is not something that, I don't know. You can use this, but yeah, actually use it. This is totally fine. Do whatever you want. Cool. All right, let's get to some more fun stuff. That was all just setup. Cool. Let's stop doing setup and let's start building your web page. Sound good? So, cool. So what I want you to try first is inside of div class name equals header details, I want all of you to try writing your first h1 element and your first p element, so h1 being heading 1 and p element being paragraph, inside of this div, right? Inside of the header details div, okay? So let's start with that, and the heading should say something like, again, like if I refer back to the mockup, the heading should look like, or it should say something like, hi, my name is blank, or you can put whatever here actually. And then the paragraph should be like a little bit of an intro. But yeah, let's start by just writing whatever you want here. And put it inside of the header details div if you want the styling. So I actually included the styling for you inside of the CSS file that was in your starter code. But you can customize it however you'd like, after, during, whenever. So let's start with that. Let's try that. Let's give that a shot. We're gonna put something inside of header details, the div. Yeah. One thing you'll notice about this div is that it actually doesn't have an end tag yet, right? It only has that start tag, and it seems to close itself on line 8, right? Mm-hmm. You can change that behavior. You can just edit this div however you'd like to put things inside of header details. So let's give that a shot first. I'll be kind of poking around.
Do you think you can unhighlight on mine?
Oh yeah, sorry. That's probably
yeah. No worries. Okay.
Cool. Let's see if there's any questions in chat. No questions in chat. Let me tell chat. Feel free to ask any questions in chat. Cool. Let's see how Jolene's doing. Oh, cool. Look at that. Oh, wait, I'm gonna refresh because it looks like the previews are not working for me, so I'm just gonna refresh real quick on everybody's pages. Cool. Great. Cool. Cool.
Apparently,
Apparently,
showing up for me.
oh, nothing's showing up. Let me poke in real quick and see what's
I
going
might have
on.
not formatted this the right way.
Oh, actually, I think you might just need to save. So if you hit Command S, can you see what happens here? Cool. So I think it's rebuilding right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It should just be a second here. Let's see. Oh yeah, there it is.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Cool. Cool. Yeah, just as a heads up, everybody will need to Command S to rebuild their page, which is saving inside of. Yeah. Looks like Gibson's getting a bit of a compilation error here. Let's take a look at what might be going on. So yeah, no, this is great. So you've created a heading one here, and looks like you're still working on the paragraph, which is totally fine. One thing I noticed is that here on line 8, you still have this slash right here, which means that that div has already ended. You actually want to end the div, yeah, right there. Perfect. So go ahead and do that. Hopefully that resolves your compilation error here. Yep, cool. And just as a pointer, I think it's actually rendering fine right now, but you actually want to use P, just the word P instead of P1. So there's only one level of paragraph. You can change the font size again with style sheets and CSS, but for paragraphs, there's only P. For headings, for whatever reason, there's headings 1 through 6. So there's 6 variants of heading sizes, 1 paragraph size. So you can use H1 through H6 and then P for paragraph. For the CSS, I targeted heading 1. So if you want to use these styles, use heading 1. Cool.
How do you change like the actual font?
Yeah. So if you want to change the font, you can actually hop into index.css. I believe the font declaration is actually the first rule. So if you look at font family, I just basically pasted like a large group of system sans serif fonts that are the default and very boring. But if you'd like to add one yourself that's installed on your system, you can add a different one here. I've added the place you can put that in quotes. But yeah, feel free to edit index.css. Same place as index.js. It's in the same folder.
Okay.
What does this star mean?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, what does like the asterisk mean, like before the font?
Oh yeah, so this is the catch-all selector. It just specifies any kind of element. So you can actually use this in different ways in CSS. Like for example, if I want to target every element inside of home container, I could do .home container and then space star. So star just selects every kind of element. I guess it's like a shorthand for doing like P, comma H1, comma H2, H3, like every kind of element. Yeah.
Wait, why on mine is like the second paragraph like font not showing up? Oh, it is. Never mind. I just didn't scroll.
Oh. Cool. How's everybody doing? Looks like we've got some cool personal sites coming up. Nice. Cool. So CJ, I'm seeing that like Gibson, you left this slash inside of line 8. So if you actually drop this and end it after line 10, then you can put these elements inside of this header details div. I think that might resolve some of the spacing issues.
Like a closer div tag?
Yeah, if you put a closer div tag after line 10, that's where you want to kind of group the elements together with.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Oh, he's changed his to Comic Sans. I'm going to skip over this one. Cool. Awesome. Great. Personal websites. How's Spency's? Let's do this. Oh!
That's Ethan, based on that one quiz.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, did look familiar. Spency, do you want to wrap this in a heading element or a paragraph element or anything like that?
Oh, I thought that header, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can style it however you'd like, actually. This is totally up to you. It's totally up to you.
Oh, I know what I can do.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah, how are we supposed to close things? Like he's mentioned on line 8, shouldn't be closing like the class there.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good question. So this basically, actually, if everybody wants to turn back to the screen share for a sec, this line 8, like Shannon pointed out with the slash here, is the same as doing this, like having a div with no content in between. So this is equivalent to doing this, right? So those are the same thing. In this case, what we want to do is we want to actually put the heading 1 and paragraph elements inside of the header details div. So all we have to do is add that closing tag after here. So this is a closing tag for this div. And then one cool thing about Code Sandbox is they've integrated something called Prettier. So if you save, it'll format the indentation and everything for you once you hit save, and then it'll show up there. But yeah, does that kind of make sense? So like I said, like this is equivalent to this, a div with no content. But in this case, we want the heading 1 and paragraph elements to be the content of this header details div. Cool?
Makes sense.
Cool. Oh, man. No.
I'm not feeling very included.
Why? Okay. See, some people are already putting images up, which is great. That's cool. So if you're trying to put an image there, you can add the SRC or source attribute to your image. And you can either put in a URL there, but another thing you can do is you can actually import that image locally. So what you can do is, for example, if I pop open the images folder, I left this in all of your starter code. Sorry. So, sorry. So you can replace that. Sorry, you don't need.
We are all EP.
Okay. Well, so what you can do is you can actually import images directly from this image directory and grab its basically its URL, or if it's small enough, it'll grab its base 64 representation. But I can call this anything. I can call this profile photo from /images/me.jpg, right? And then what I can do is with this value, profile photo, I can go into source and actually put that value inside of braces here, and it will show up. It'll show up right here. Actually, my thing is still not building for whatever reason. I might have to restart my sandbox, but my container something seems to be wrong with this. I'm going to restart the sandbox real quick. Just give me one moment here.
Yeah, where can we find projects, the JS file? Is it in images? Oh no, it's not.
Sorry, could you repeat your question?
Oh yeah, where is this JS file found?
The JS file for index?
No, for prod. Oh yeah, or no, for project.
Oh, for project. Okay, so we're actually going to create all the pages.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. I only created a skeleton for the index page, but we're going to create the rest of the files. Okay, so something is up with this sandbox. Like, it's clearly what it's showing me is not. Yeah, what the heck? Okay, well, I'll just remove it manually then. I don't know why it's having me do that. All right, success. So you can see if I've imported the value from that images file, like in JavaScript instead of with a string, it's still going to work. You can't see it here, but now you can see it. It's going to appear here, just as the same. And you might be wondering, okay, what did it actually put inside of that source attribute? Well, something beforehand actually mapped this profile photo value to the string that it actually ended up at, which is /static/me-blah blah blah.jpg. So this is kind of a nice way to reference your images using JavaScript imports, because the reason why this is nice is because if you change what the image is without renaming the file, the next time you publish your project, the URL that this profile photo is going to use will actually be different, which forces the browser to load the image again, right? So if you've changed the image file without renaming the actual image file, it'll still reload the freshest image that you built your project with. That might not happen if you use a string value, like, for example, with something online, like, I saw Gibson just, okay, well, everybody
Wait.
removed their string examples. But if you do that online, what can happen is the browser can actually aggressively cache the image. And if you change the image file online, the browser can still load the old image. So that could end up being a problem. So that's one reason we do this imports thing here.
Why is this happening to me? Oh, just kidding. It fixed. Never mind.
Yeah. Okay, so some people, okay. I don't know if I want you to use me.jpg. I
Well,
don't know why
you
that's-
included it, so.
That's on you.
That's not part of the starter code intention. Like,
But it is.
okay, well,
I was just provided by Gatsby.
cool. So feel free to add anything you'd like to this homepage. We're gonna move on in just a minute here. But yeah, add anything you want. Ask questions while we're here. We are not gonna touch this page for the rest of the workshop. So
If you wanted to add a photo, would you add the photo to the images folder?
yeah, you definitely could. So you can
Okay.
upload it. I think you can upload something using this button,
Yeah.
upload files. Yeah, so
Okay.
upload files. And then, so you can upload it. And then, like I said, you can import that image kind of like as if it were a JavaScript dependency. And then you can put it inside of curly braces in the src attribute of the image. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, wait a second. I realized the stream is cutting off your faces. I'm gonna put your faces a little bit higher so people can see you. Yeah, I'm only seeing. There's only 4 heads in the. How come the chat didn't say anything? Maybe they were okay with the 4 head setup, I guess. The weird thing about chat is it lags like about 30 seconds. Like, yeah, look, okay, now we see everybody. That's fun. Cool. All right, is everybody good to move on? You feeling good?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Give me a second here to load up the next part of this, which is going to be the About page. So, what are we going to need for the About page? What we're going to do is we're going to just practice more just writing markup, basically. And this part is going to be more directed because I want the structure to be very specific so that you get the styling out of the box. If you want to deviate and create your own styling, feel more than free to. This is totally up to you. But what we're going to create in this section of the workshop is this navigation bar, right, inside of the About page. We're going to start by creating it inside of the About page. We're going to create this kind of hero section at the top that has a very large header and a little bit of an accented background. And then we're going to put some content right here below the hero section. Okay? Sound good, everybody? And here's what my approach is going to be. And this is also like kind of how I approach these projects in general, like just when I'm building something out myself. Like I will go in and without necessarily planning the structure of it in advance, I'll try to do it for one page. And then when I notice, like we're repeating this navbar, the same stuff across homepage, about page, project, it's actually on every page, right? Once I notice that I'm reusing it, then we'll figure out how do we deal with that. But for now, let's just try putting it on the About page so that we can prototype really quickly, okay? So we're gonna stuff everything into an About page at the very beginning. So the first thing you wanna do is, actually I will shadow, who wants to volunteer to pair program? I'll just like use your sandbox and I'll have you type in the stuff. How about that? Does anybody want to volunteer to do that? Do you want to drive the... video for now. Oh, we got like, okay.
I'll not do it because I already did it.
Oh yeah, that's okay. Jolene wants to do it. All right, let's go to Jolene's sandbox. Cool. So the first thing we're gonna do is Jolene, if you could right click. I think you right click. Oh no, you hover over the Pages folder, and we're gonna click New File. So everybody's gonna create a new file inside of Pages. We're gonna call this about.js with lowercase. So about.js. Name this file about.js. Cool. And I pointed out at the beginning that we're using Gatsby, which is this community built tool. And the nice thing about Gatsby is that every time you create a JS file inside of this Pages folder, it'll go ahead and map that to the route of the name of your JavaScript file inside of the URL. So if I now go to Jolene's sandbox URL /about and I load that up, it's actually going to create a page for me. Because I haven't put anything there yet, it's probably going to give me some kind of error. But that's where that about file is going to end up being displayed, at your sandbox URL /about. So if you wanna test it out, you can just go into that little preview window and add /about to the preview. And I encourage you all to do that. Actually, I'm not seeing Jolene's about.js. I'm gonna refresh your sandbox real quick just to make sure I'm getting the latest content here. Let's see. Okay, it's loading up. Cool. Okay, now I see your about.js. So, why don't we start by creating kind of the boilerplate, or like the starter pieces for creating a React component. So do you remember kind of how that starts?
The imports.
Right. Yeah, let's start with the imports.
And then the CSS file.
Oh, for some reason, I'm not seeing your changes live. That's weird. Let me refresh one more time. Yeah, do try saving it, but I'm also going to reload real quick. There's maybe something's up with my internet. Let's see. Do you want to try saving everything and refreshing as well? Saving each of the files and refreshing? Yeah, I want to make sure everybody can see kind of the changes that are happening live. Let's see if it loads up here. Oh, okay, cool. You just showed up on the little side window, so it seems promising. Yeah. Okay, cool. I see your cursor now. Perfect. Cool. So yeah, so we've so that's perfect. So we've you can see how Jolene's added a variable called about, and so I'll explain this syntax now. We're storing a function here. This is what an empty function looks like inside of JavaScript. Yeah, it's functionally equivalent to doing this, like const about equals function, like that, but it's just a shorter way of writing it. Cool. So that is a function. Cool. So why don't you try first, let's just return a string for now, because a string is actually a valid React element, but we just want to make sure that that everything is kind of wired up correctly and we can access the about page. And one more piece of boilerplate that we'll actually need here that you might have noticed at the bottom is the export. So we not only need to import the dependencies that this uses, but for anything that uses this file, we need it to export that page. So I'm now going to visit /about in Jolene's browser, and if I visit about, you should see a string that says hello or whatever you returned inside of your code. So yeah, that looks good. Cool. So I think we're pretty much ready to edit. If you could actually rename the index import, index.css import, to about.css, that's going to be the style sheet that this depends on. Yeah. Cool. Perfect. Great. Cool. Is everybody good? Everybody visited the about page and you see some string that you returned there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just flag me down if you need any help and I can jump into your sandbox. So let's go ahead and start, by, we'll open, some parentheses and we'll add our first div. Yeah, so let's create a div here. And inside of this div, let's create another div that will represent our navbar. So we will create another div here. So the outermost div is going to be kind of a wrapper for our whole page, but this one is going to be have a class name, and yeah, let's call it navbar. Just navbar, all lowercase, no spaces. Great. And I guess like how we want to group things here is we have this section. I'm going to call this like the title meta section. Like this has like an image of yourself and your name, right? So this is one section of the navbar, like this top left piece, and there's a top right piece with links, right? So we're actually going to group those into their own divs as well. So Jolene, if you could add 2 divs inside of this. One has the class name title-meta. Let's call that title-meta. And let's create another div, not inside of that, but next to it, called links, just links. And the links will represent that right section. I realized also that I forgot to import the navbar CSS. We won't need to we can rip this out later, but just so that we can see what's going on with our styling, I'm going to import component/navbar.css at the top.
Okay.
Cool. So we shouldn't see anything yet. Why do you think that is? Why, and this is anybody's up to anybody to answer. Why is there nothing showing up on the page yet? Any ideas?
We have no content.
Yeah, exactly. We have no content. We've created some structure, right? We've created a bunch of divs, which is great, but we haven't actually put any text on the page. We've only have like a bunch of empty structures. So let's go ahead and create those structures now. Cool. So I think it's going to just take a little bit. But Jolene, let's add. One sec. Let me refer to my. Okay. So inside of title meta, let's start by putting an image. So we're going to put an image element inside of the title meta. Oh shoot, I think I lost you again.
Okay.
Let me refresh.
Did I show up?
Let me check. Loading right now. I don't see you quite yet.
Try refreshing on my end.
Yeah, so once you get to this part, let's add an image inside of title meta, the title meta element, and then inside of links, you can start with anchor tags, which are link tags, like A tags. But what you can also do is there's a really nice utility that Gatsby includes that we can go ahead and import at the top as well, and it looks like this. If I put import, add curly braces, link, import, curly braces, link, capital L, from, and then I'm going to import it from Gatsby, the package Gatsby. So I'm going to import the link element from the Gatsby package. Do you see my cursor, Julie, or?
No.
Oh shoot.
Let me try refreshing.
Cool. Yeah, I will go ahead and do the same. But yeah, everybody add that link to the top, link dependency. Cool.
Yeah, I'm still not seeing your.
Oh, wait a second. I think it's because I am in the live share now. I for some reason own this live share. Wait, that's very weird. Maybe I need to be. Oh, maybe I'll try
I think mine ended for some. Or no.
Yeah, let me try clicking your live share link again instead. Jump into chat. I'll just real quick. Join your live share. Here we go. Okay, cool. Perfect. Great. This is good. Great. Yeah. So if you've imported the link at the top, one thing you can do now is we can go ahead and add a link. And an example of a link we're going to create is the top left bit with your name is actually going to point back to your home page, right? Because most people expect, like, at the top left, there's a link that brings them home. So what we're going to do is we're going to, Jolene, inside of line 12 that I've written here, do you want to add a link component from the link that we had above? And the link component, yep, is going to be capital because that's how the component is named in the import. And we're going to give this one attribute name called to, so to equals. And then the to attribute is going to have a string, and the string accepts a path to go to for this link. In this case, the path is going to just be slash, which represents the URL without anything attached to it. Cool, perfect. So let's go ahead and put a paragraph also inside of this link, and we'll put your name there. So that's going to be the first bit of content that we'll see on the page. And it should be your name with a link element wrapped around it. So you could go ahead and add a paragraph element inside of that link.
Oh, so it's like a div?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the link component is going to wrap around this paragraph here. Great. So let's save this and see if that shows up over here. And what we expect to see is if we visit /about in your sandbox preview, we should just see that your name in the top left, maybe with a broken image reference. So let me check that out, see if that's, yep, so we see that. And what you'll notice is if you click the word Jolene, it'll bring us back home without a full page refresh. So that's something that Gatsby actually gives to you out of the box, is you click that link, it's not like a regular link, it's like an instant link, it's super fast. And that's something that Gatsby is definitely known for, is everything loads super fast.
Oh.
Cool. So inside of this links element now, yeah, so let's put more links here. And what we'll do is we will add links to /about and /projects. So everybody create links to /about/projects. I'm going to jump around into other people's sandboxes real quick while you do that, Jolene. Just see if, make sure everybody's cool. It's like Ace has his navbar pretty much set up. Let's jump into CJ's. Cool, looks good. Cool. Looks like you might be missing one. Some close tag here. I'm trying to find it. Div. So this one's this div. Maybe actually if we just save this, I wonder if no, that did not do it. Yeah, there's something up here. There might be some kind of syntax error. Let's see, so right here it's /. Oh, so actually in line 14, yeah.
Okay.
Cool. And then for the links to /about, I guess no, this is just the name part. For on line 13, this link can just point to /, which is the URL without anything. The links to everything else, all the other pages, will be inside of the links div.
Okay.
Cool. Let's check out Shannon's. Nice. Looks good so far. Cool. Might have to do that same thing to line 16 where we, actually in line 10 as well, I think you might have not opened up the title meta div. So we want to put the image and link to your name inside of the title meta div.
Wait, what do you mean? Sorry.
Oh yeah, so remember how like this syntax here in line 10, this is equivalent to doing this without content, but we want to actually put all of this stuff inside of here.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Let's hop to Gibson. Hey, I'm Dilly. Okay. This is actually going to be Gatsby. Let me just correct this quick typo. Great. Let's jump to Spencer's. This is a picture of, man, people are really using that. I regret including that. Cool, so hopefully everybody's creating a nav bar here. Ace about projects.
Are they supposed to be spaced out?
They are, yeah. So you want to actually put these links inside of the links div, which is going to be the rightmost section. So the links div is going to be styled to the right. Yeah. Cool. It looks like Jolene's got it.
My outlink is like actually not showing up for some reason.
Oh, that is weird. Let me refresh your preview real quick. Maybe there was some intermediate syntax error. Oh, no. That's weird. You know what I did not do inside of my thing is for the link stuff, I actually did not wrap this in a paragraph element. So let's see if this is just throwing off the styling of that. Let's try this and see if that does anything for us. Okay. Yeah, I think that's now showing up inline.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just as a heads up for everyone else, for the links inside of the links div, don't wrap the don't wrap it in a paragraph like you did with your name. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't quite know why I did that. Cool. Real quickly, I'm gonna fix this import. I think this is capital. This navbar. Some of these. Cool.
What about Gatsby makes it like load so fast?
Yeah, this is a good question. Why is Gatsby so fast? So one reason is that when you load, there's some really interesting performance things they do. One example is like when you load a Gatsby page, it only loads the first page first, but it opportunistically starts fetching in the other pages as you're sitting on the page. One cool example of this, I think the NOD site actually does this. So if you go to innovativedesign.club, and then what you'll notice is if you look at the network requests that are being sent while you're on this site, if you hover over one of the links that hasn't loaded, it'll actually start fetching it in line. So let me do that one more time. I don't know if that worked. Oh shoot. Another one of these. Oh yeah, did you see that? So I hovered over this like little box here, and do you see all the stuff that showed up? So it started loading in like all this JavaScript that has to do with this page while I hovered over it, so that as soon as I click this, it already has all the information it needs to like put the page up, and all it needed to do was swap the content. So it's like, yeah, it's like this really, because it's like not just HTML, like there's a JavaScript page being rendered, like it can just instantly swap the page contents with the next thing. It doesn't have to go out and send a full page request. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Cool. So at this point, you should be able to move around your page with this navbar. But the big problem is that this navbar is not on our home page. Because we're kind of running short on time here, one thing that I might have to do is I may have to like get you to this point where we share the navbar between the pages, but then I might quickly go over like what comes next after this and like kind of the React concepts that you need to know to build out the rest of this page. Does that sound good to everybody, or is there any burning questions that we have that we want to explore before kind of wrapping things up? Or cool.
Good.
Yeah.
No, let's go.
All right. Let's do this part. So you'll notice like we built this great navbar here, but as soon as we click Jolene's name here, there's no way to get back to the place we were before, which is kind of jarring and weird. So this is where the big strength of React comes in. I promised that you would not be copying and pasting a lot of stuff in this workshop, and that's because we're using React. And this is why this is a big strength of React, is that we can extract a bunch of stuff into components, right? So what does that mean? Basically, using components in React is a lot like how you might use functions or variables inside of the coding things that you might have done in a CS class. Like you don't want to repeat a certain bit of functionality, so you put it into a separate variable, you put it into a separate module so that you can reference it in a bunch of other places. That's exactly what we're going to do here. So to do that, what I'm going to suggest for us is we're going to take all of this stuff that Jolene created from lines 9 to 20, everything inside of the navbar div, and we're going to put that in its own file. And then we're going to reference that in both index.js and about.js, which are our pages. So the first thing I want us to do is go ahead and head into components, into the components folder, and create a new file in components called navbar. Let's make navbar capital N navbar. It doesn't super matter. I mean, you could actually name it whatever you want, but I named it capital navbar.js. So, if you'd like to do that, you're more than welcome to. And Jolene, let's extract this bit that you've highlighted in about.js and move it over to navbar.js. And we are actually going to create this much in the same way that we've created our other pages inside of, let me pull this up here so that we can see what Jolene's doing. Cool. Yep, so Jolene's now adding import React from React. She's going to also import some of the other things that we used inside of about, such as the navbar CSS file. Notice that she's used // here because the file location has changed with respect to where we're writing it from, right? So in the previous about file, we did // component /navbar.css because we are inside of the pages folder. Now that we're already inside of the components folder, we can just reference this as // right? So because we're in the same folder. // meaning move one directory up. // meaning stay in this current directory. So we are now in the components folder. We're creating a navbar.js file. We are adding some imports to get things started, and Julian is moving all that markup into this navbar component. Great. Turn navbar. And we're going to go ahead and export this as well, just like we did with our other bits throughout our pages.
Is there an export other than defaults that we would use?
Yeah, there are imports other than defaults. So, for example, that's a good question. So for Gatsby, for example, do you see how for the link in Gatsby we used curly braces around the import? That's because the link how do I call it? The link export of Gatsby is not the default export. So we're picking out a named export from Gatsby that's named link. So if we wanted to export a named export from navbar, instead of, actually we could do this while exporting a default too, but if we want to export some constant like navbar width, for example, and we'll call this navbar width 20. If we wanted to reference navbar width anywhere else in our project, we could do import navbar width from navbar.js like that, right? So this is called retrieving a named import or named export from this module. Contrast that with the default where we don't use curly braces. We use just a name from /navbar.js. And importantly about the default export, this can be whatever name we want inside of the other file because it already knows, because we're not using curly braces, this name does not have to match this name. So I can call this the navbar from navbars.js because we're not using curly braces, it's retrieving the default export value here. Whereas this name actually does have to match because we're retrieving a named export from here. Yeah, cool. So it looks like we do have to add a link here, or add the link dependency inside of navbar.js. I think that's the only thing that we are missing inside of this navbar file. So let's retrieve the named import from, or the named export from Gatsby. Cool. And then let's try now importing and using the navbar from the about.js file. So it looks like we don't need this link dependency anymore. Instead, we want to depend on our navbar components. So let's try to do that. Cool. So Julien's writing import navbar from // components. Great. / navbar. Cool. And yep, she's just going to put that inside of our div here. So let's continue to have a div actually in the about section because we will end up putting other things inside of about. But let's write our navbar component into here. Right, perfect. So you'll notice that using your own component, a component that you've defined inside of your React, is just like using any other element as an HTML. And this is the really powerful reusable part of React, is that we can extract these things and still have it be very readable, right? So if I'm someone that hasn't seen Jolene's website before, but I'm trying to contribute to Jolene's website for some reason, I'm looking at the About page, and this is still like very readable to me, right? Like without knowing really what the navbar is, I can tell what's going on here, that there is a div, and then inside of that div, there's a navbar. If I really wanted to, I could poke into the navbar file and see what's going on in there, but I don't really have to, right? Because I can kind of assume like what the navbar means. And that's why component extraction is so helpful, and it looks like Jolene's gone ahead and add that to her index page as well. And yeah, so you can now reuse these components across your screens, and now you have like this working static navbar at the top that you can use to move around your site, which is great. And importantly, like we can now like just throw this in. If we toss this into any page that we're in or that we're creating, we can now update this navbar. And the great part about this is, let's say we want to add a new link. We just head into the navbar component. It's updated everywhere, automatically. So cool. So more reuse. Yeah, cool. Any questions about that? Has everybody gotten to set up their navbar? Cool, perfect. This looks good. Oh shoot, I accidentally closed somebody's. Sorry, I didn't mean to close it. Cool. Looks like Spencer. There's some.
Yeah, I did a lot wrong, I think.
Actually, so this looks good to me. Not sure quite what's happening here. Let me just give it a refresh. Oh, it did give an error here. That's interesting. Yeah, can't quite find. Oh, I see. So expected the strings. Check the render method of about. Huh? That is that's weird. I wonder if
Is it in my navbar.js that's the problem?
Yeah, potentially. Let's check
Because I
that
kind
out.
of sped through that.
Oh yeah, looks like you're gonna want to actually add an export to the navbar as well, just to make sure that this all works. Yeah, cool. How's everybody else doing? Gibson, Shannon. Looks like the same kind of parsing error here too. Oh yeah, let's add that navbar export. Cool. Shannon, we actually want to export the navbar const. Yeah. Cool. Let's check out. Let's see if it actually is good.
If I want to put it in the index page, where do I put it?
Yeah, you can actually use it the same way as you did in the about. You can just throw it kind of like within this outermost div here, and you can put it above the home container, for example. Yeah.
Also, I think you already mentioned this, but like, what exactly do the number of periods here mean?
Yeah.
Like how far back you go?
Right, exactly. So if I did .. that means move one directory up from where I currently am inside of index.js. So that moves us from the pages folder up to the source folder, and then I want to go back into images/hehe.jpg. So I can actually move up multiple directories, right? So if I wanted to reach content, the content directory, I could do .. content. So you can chain these .. together to move up, right? And then to stay where you are, it's just .. So .. for like projects.css, for example.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. How's everybody else? Okay, let's just resolve some of the parsing errors here, and then I will. Okay, cool. Looks like we just need to fix this quick typo for import, but the rest of this looks good. Let's give this a quick refresh. Head over to about. I think CJ, you just might need to now insert this navbar into the index page, and I think you're good. Yeah, the navbar looks like it's showing up correctly.
Okay.
Let's check out the navbar and Shannon's. Cool. So Shannon, I think the only thing that you need is to add the link dependency. So the error is that link is not defined. So we need to go ahead and grab that from the Gatsby package, like we did inside of about.js earlier when we were just defining the navbar. So we remember that it's a named export. So we use import and then braces, and you can add link and Gatsby here as well. Cool. Check out Gibson's. Gibson's looks good. Hey, Spencer, how's it going? Cool.
I'm still having the same issue.
Interesting. Expected comma. That is interesting. Not quite sure what's going on there. I'll just give this a refresh because I think it. Okay, I think it's still something about the export is going a little bit weird. Check the render method of about. Navbar from components. Oh, that is a little bit weird. I'm not quite sure why that's happening. Can you try saving your navbar file?
Mm-hmm.
Let's check that out. See what's going on. Let's go default navbar. Import navbar from, yep, that all looks good to me. Export default about. Parsing error. Expected comma. That is so weird. Maybe you accidentally inserted some invisible. No, this is all fine. Let's see if this is a problem with your. Oh, actually, no, it just built correctly. So let's refresh this. Cool. I think that's showing up now. Yeah. Yeah, it looks good now.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For on my index page, where am I putting like the navbar? Because I imported it, but I'm not sure in like this body where to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So oh, it looks like you. Sorry, you're talking. Oh, you're talking about the index page.
Yeah.
Yes. So we can put that anywhere. We can actually just put that after line 8 and just start it up at the top of the outermost div. Yeah. So we can just render the navbar here, just like we did in about. And it looks like just a quick typo here for the import of the CSS. And unterminated JSX contents. Let's see, div. Oh, actually no, that's yeah, you're just editing this part. So navbar does not accept any contents inside of it. So let's have it close itself inside of line 9. So we can just do that by adding a slash exactly where your cursor is. Cool. And if we save that, it should show up here. Cool, perfect.
Oh, yay.
Nice.
So exciting.
Awesome. Cool, yeah. So I think everybody's at this place where we've reused the navbar now. So here's what I'll do. I unfortunately did not budget the time super well because we are, going a little bit over now. And so what I'll do is I will show this code sandbox. I'll share this with you, and maybe we could do a part 2 if we want to do a guided version as well. But let me just pull up the final version and just show you exactly like what the structure would end up becoming, because I think you have all the tools now to kind of figure out how to build your own React components and kind of structure them. The only thing that you would need from me is how my style sheets actually like structured everything, right? Like what you would need is just like knowing what class names are what and things like that. But I just want to like touch on a couple more React concepts. So inside of about, what I was going to do next is just create a component, another component, that had this page layout that allowed us to have this hero section, right? So see this hero section here that had this kind of accent background and like this big header. What we were going to do is we were going to add a page layout component that repeated this behavior across any of our pages. Like for projects, for example, we want to show the projects label. For Beep Boop project, it should come from the value of the current Beep Boop project. And so what we're going to do is, or what we would have done was create a page layout component. It would have accepted one attribute called title for the heading, the big heading in the hero section. In React, we call these attributes props. Props are a way of specifying these input values into components. Think about it like calling a function with some arguments or some parameters to pass into your next component. In this case, for page layout, we passed it a title. And where did that title go? Well, we accepted that title over here in the page layout component, and we just put it inside of this heading, right? So just like we did before with adding values inside of elements, inside of our page, we just put it inside of curly braces for title, right? And we plucked it out of this page layout, function body, and then we put it inside of here. And then remember what I said about content, like what goes within the beginning and ending tag of a component. All this stuff ends up being a kind of prop too. So this is all a prop that instead of being specified in the start tag like title was, it just ends up being called children. So anything that I specify here, including paragraph elements, including heading elements, it will just be rendered inside of this div called content, right? So that's an example of using a component in a way that as an example of a component in a way that allows us to compose elements together. Like I could put the navbar inside of the page layout if I wanted to. Like clearly that would cause some broken behavior, but in this case I can just specify any elements I want inside of here, and it will show up as children within this content div here, right? So anything that I want will show up inside of there. And I reuse this page layout component inside of projects too, right? So you can see how I'm starting to reuse bits across my page. I have navbar, page layout, and if I wanted to change those in the future, it would be really easy to because I've defined them inside of components, right? Cool. I actually this part I ended up abstracting all away. Actually, this is a great place to end this workshop because the next workshop is about hooks. And hooks are a way of adding more behavior into your site beyond what I've shown you today. So everything I've shown you today, it was like okay, cool, but like you probably like all I did was save you a little bit of copy and pasting, right? I promise you React is cooler than that. There are more things you can do besides reusability. And an example of that was all this editing behavior that I showed you before, right? That I showed you in the final version. But for that, we're going to need more functionality from a React concept called hooks. So I will leave us with that. I will say that we're gonna use a hook that I've defined inside of your hooks folder to load up the projects in your website and then render them on the page. But yeah, does that sound good, everybody? We can pick this up again with a workshop that's an introduction to hooks, which adds more behavior to our page. But does anyone have any other questions just about React or what we did today, or where you can take this? Anything in general like that?
Wait, can I ask one thing? When you called on title and content, is it assumed to be part of content because you're not calling on it, and that's just the only what is it called, a prop left outside of title?
Oh, like why did this go inside of the prop called children?
Yeah.
So this stuff, that's just a behavior of JSX. So anything inside of the open and closed tags for a component that we define will automatically be placed into a prop called component, or sorry, called children.
Yeah.
Called children. So this is functionally equivalent to doing this actually. Children equals this.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, that's functionally equivalent. Actually, this is, I don't know if this is valid syntax. Yeah, I think I need to do this. I forget how to actually do this. Yeah, I think this is the functional equivalent of this. Yeah, is specifying an array of elements to render inside of children. So that's functionally equivalent. But this is definitely not as nice, right? This is not as visually appealing as this, which looks just like HTML. The nice thing about this is it looks a lot like the HTML that you might have written before. Is like putting things inside of other things and composing them together.
Okay. Yeah. But title specifically you had to call out.
Yes. So anything I specify inside of this part, like some prop name, like subtitle, for example, right? So subtitle here, I am in charge of naming these things and then picking up those names inside of the page layout component. With for example, with 30, right? Things like that. I have to pick those up specifically as those names here. Subtitle, what I say, width, right? So I have to pick those out here.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so just like one last clarifying question then. Does that mean then if, say you did not call on any prop and you just added in content that you wanted, which prop would that go into?
Gotcha. So what if I put this stuff in here? You're asking if I put this stuff in here and I don't ask for children here, like I don't define children here? Yeah, so this is actually the same as we did before, except we're not giving children a name. So what's going on is if I actually inspect this, if I inspect what's going on here, children is still being passed. We're just not doing anything with it. So similarly to like how in JavaScript, like you can call functions with like any number of arguments you want, but if you don't pick them up with names, nothing happens to them. So similarly in React, if I go into this page layout component with the React DevTools, I look for page layout. I look at the props. Those are my children. Here are my children, H1 and P, right? Like my heading and paragraph that I defined, but I'm not doing anything with them. I haven't even picked them up inside of that page layout function. Where was I? Here, yeah. here, right? So I haven't done anything with children, but it's still being passed to me. Yeah.
And if you wanted to like do something with those children or like a specific child, you can just index in like that.
Oh yeah, I think you could. The only thing there, yeah. So you're asking, okay, like let's say we picked up children, and I said like, oh, for some reason, I only want to grab children 0, right?
Yeah.
So we could do this. The only challenge here is that this, I don't know if children is always an array. So the type, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the type of the children prop is something called JSX.element. And valid JSX elements are arrays, but also top-level objects. So if I specify just H1, I'm not quite sure it will just be an array. Yeah, so you can see here that it's not an array, it's just an H1. And if I index into it, I don't know. Yeah, I indexed into it, but nothing showed up on the page. That's because 0 is not indexable into an H1. So typically, we don't tend to index into our children like this, because it might not be an array, basically. We usually just dump the children inside of here, because if we put an array of JSX elements inside of braces, it will render them as if you place them there. But yeah, that's just to say that both arrays of JSX elements and just JSX elements are valid React children. Both of those are valid. Same as, yeah, there's a lot of valid React children. So that don't assume what the type of children is, because it's very broad. It could be a Boolean, like false is a valid React child, that renders nothing. Undefined, null, strings, numbers. What isn't a valid React child? I don't know actually. A class, I guess, is not. Just a class on its own. I don't think that makes sense. But yeah. Anything else? Anything else people are curious about?
Yeah. What is I'm not familiar with arrow functions. What is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I did breeze through that a little bit. But yeah, so I think I mentioned briefly that this arrow function syntax is equivalent to doing homepage equals function like this. There is a really small homepage. So there is a small difference in that, but it's a little bit too in the weeds of like the JavaScript runtime to really get into it. But is there any practical difference here for our sake? I guess like to make this concrete, like if we had, it's not like width gets passed like that though. Let's create a contrived function example. So const. Dang it. Okay, so we have an x.js file. Where did it go? Dang it.
Doesn't exist.
It was only in his mind.
Dang it. X.js. Okay, so let's say we had like add to. This is a, b, return a. Oh, actually there is one difference we can talk about. Add to arrow. So if this is the same, it's saying return a plus b. The cool thing about an arrow function and it's the reason why people will compare these to lambda functions, is that in arrow functions you can actually, if you drop the braces, the first line will be the return result. So if I do a comma b and then just arrow into a plus b, these are now the same, and this just looks cooler. So if you want to I mean, there's no reason. Yeah, I guess there's no practical reason, I guess, to do it like this. But except to look
Does
cool.
it decrease runtime or anything?
That's actually, yeah, there is something there. So actually, in this case, this bit is actually because this does not create what we call a closure in JavaScript. This does not have its own like functional. It doesn't have a this context, so this may have slightly less overhead, but not enough for us to care about in practicality. But yes, that is actually it's a very obscure bit of trivia that I'm not sure we'll ever use in these workshops. But yes, this is like slightly less overhead.
Wait, okay, that leads into my other question in that in these JS files, we are technically just returning one line.
Yes,
Like
you're
that,
right.
all that white space technically doesn't matter.
So you're saying why don't we just like this? You're right.
Okay.
Okay, so you're right. But the thing is here, more than likely, you'll have something inside of the function body of your component. I guess I did that in anticipation of, like, for example, here with about.js. Oh, dang it. Dang it. No, this can also just, dang it. Okay, well, there is an example here of this. Oh, yeah, look at this. So I had to put all this stuff. This is not one line. Yeah, that's not one line. So like sometimes, I guess, okay, all right, I can see this point. Yes, we can not put return statements there. That's a fair point.
Wait, so what does the return statement actually like mean then?
Yeah. So the return statement basically means, like, oh, I guess because we're never calling this, right? You're asking, like, oh, we never actually call about page, so why does it matter if we return anything, right? Is it maybe that's your question?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, if it's not your question,
well, I'm just like confused about, like, in the other one where you had things before the return. Like, why is it like? So what are you returning? What aren't you returning?
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. So in the React component context, what we return must be JSX elements, or valid React child, like an array of elements or whatever. This stuff actually was just set up for this component, so you don't have to understand all this stuff. But an example of this is, let's say we had a component like our add2. This is super weird, but let's have a component. Visually, it accepts two props called A and B, and it renders, well, actually, this is also super contrived. Anyway, so we'll accept a props object, and we'll say props.a plus props.b, and then we say return p result. This is a weird component. So add2, we add props.a, props.b, and the way that we consume this is like a equals 3, b equals 4, and then it renders a paragraph with 7 for some reason. So this is an example of, like, some setup or some computation we could do. But yes, this is also doable in a line. Yes, you're right. Fine. Okay. I get it.
Wait, so is it still correct even though there is no return statement?
Oh, yeah. I guess what I mean by this is an implicit return because I don't have curly braces. Because I don't have curly braces around this thing, I'm not opening a function body here. This does not technically return anything. Actually, it'll tell me, yeah, like, what's going on here, because this is just a blank expression now. Like, I'm not assigning this to a variable, I'm not returning it, so this actually functionally does not mean anything, unless I return it, right? Unless I return it, or I store it in some variable and return that, right? So I need to do something like that for this to work.
Right? So when can you not, like, implicitly return things? Or, like, in instance you can't just use arrow?
Yeah, when can I not do that? I guess that's whenever I need to do something that I can't console.log, or something that needs to exist on more than one line. Like, for example, I cannot assign something in something that has just this, right? So if I have a function like add2arrow, what if I wanted to store this result inside of the variable c? I can't do that here. I don't even know. I don't think I can do this. Oh, just kidding. I definitely can. Yeah. The thing is though, that this is not quite what you expect, because why are we returning this, right? Like, this is very strange. Oh, yeah,
because you're just storing something. It's not like doing anything.
Right. So you wouldn't store variables inside of this. I can't say can't, because JavaScript is a little bit weird like that. Like, the thing that's returned when you assign something is the result. I guess that is a cool way to do that. Right? So if I do this, the return result is 3. Wow, that's actually very cool, that I can have this function that takes in a variable, then both puts it in. No, this doesn't work because C gets copied. Actually, there's no pointers in JavaScript, so you can't like, this doesn't. Yeah, this does not make any sense as a function. I take that all back. But what I mean to say is, like, if you have multiple lines where you're, like, computing something or storing something, you're more than likely going to open braces. I think like generally, unless you're doing something where you have a very short expression like this, it doesn't hurt to open braces. I think it's fine to open braces and like have an extra return statement. I think it's like, not, this is, right, doing this is not like unbelievably cleaner than the above, right? Like, unless you're like really, really like into like fewest character possible, like code golf type thing, like maybe like, but I think this is just fine. I have no qualms with this version of this component.
Wait, so in the index.js where you made it like no longer have the so instead of curly braces is now just like regular parentheses?
Yes.
So that means it'll return that, or is it not returning here?
It is returning this, yeah. Because I don't have curly braces, the first thing that is after this arrow is what gets returned. It's putting this, I think this is for stylistic reasons. I don't know if I actually need this. This is like, that was added by my formatter when I saved it. I didn't explicitly add this. But yeah, the first value to come out of this function is the thing that's going to be returned.
I see. So could you technically write all of that in one line?
Oh, like
technically speaking, is that fine? Like, does the white space not matter?
Oh, yeah, good question. Does white space matter? No. The white space in this does not matter. But I mean, Code Sandbox does this, you might have noticed it shifted your code around. I mean, this is way better than what I just had, right? Like, I don't want to read this. I want to read this. Actually, that's one of my favorite things to do while writing React is like, this is maybe a little weird, but like I like this prettier thing. It's so nice. Like, you'll be writing some like super messy, like unindented code, and then you save it, and it's all like, it's like all rearranged. It's so satisfying. It's like, I don't know, maybe that's a little weird. I don't know.
No, that's righteously satisfying.
Cool. Anything else that people are curious about?
Wait, how do you do colors, like with backgrounds and like?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Is
Yeah.
that like importing images, or is that different?
It is inside of the, well, yeah, it doesn't have to be an image. It could be an image. So in this example, if you head into your index.css file or your, let's see, I think it actually is in common.css where I defined the background colors here. Yeah. So for example, with this hero, I said background color is black with like 5% opacity. Yeah. So you could change this. You could make this, tinted red or something like that as well. But you would do all of that inside of a style sheet as opposed to your React component usually. Yeah. Actually, why did this not change? Maybe it's not refreshing. Or maybe it did change and I'm just...
Oh yeah, it changed. It's like
it did?
very light pink.
Oh, okay. I am color deficient, so I can't quite see that. So we'll bump it up just so that I can see it. Okay, cool. So the cool thing here is that now this applies to all my pages. I just changed one line. This is the beauty of CSS, right? It's like just one page, right?
Colors just did it for me. That's it. That's beautiful. Okay.
Cool. Yeah. No, it's very configurable.
This last question is, are there any limitations that come with like using Gatsby versus like, would there be a reason to use a different library?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because while creating this last week, I actually regretted using Gatsby maybe halfway. So let's talk about those trade-offs very briefly. On the one hand, Gatsby includes a lot of really cool utilities like that super fast linking and the link component, and also we didn't get to this part, but what hooks will end up allowing us to do is reference these markdown files. Have you seen Markdown before by chance, in READMEs or CS projects or something like that? It's kind of like this. It's kind of like a document format, and if I thought I could preview Markdown in this. Maybe I can't, but But Markdown is like a way of representing a document, and it allows me to reference this content inside of my component, like this, right? So I took the title attribute actually out of Markdown here, which is pretty cool to be able to reference like a much easier to edit thing inside of Markdown from my JavaScript. Like that's pretty neat. So that's like a feature of Gatsby. Like you can reference those things very easily. On the other hand, to do those powerful things inside of Gatsby, you have to learn something else called GraphQL, which is maybe a little bit more annoying, but it's not quite JavaScript. It's like a way of querying different things, like different entities. I'm not going to go into this. My intention was not to teach GraphQL, but yeah, that's a little bit annoying. Is like Gatsby has like some things that you have to learn as overhead, aside from React. It's a really good. It's very flexible. I think Gatsby allows you to plug into a lot of different things, but there are other options. One thing that you might want to look into after this workshop is Next.js, because Next.js just released something that's just like Gatsby, which is static site generation. So if I look up Next.js, yeah, so you see at this top, Next.gen SSG support, static site generation. So you can do the same things that we were just doing or the same things that I demoed with that editor inside of Next.js. They actually have docs specifically for Next.js. So this is another option to use is Next.js. It's not unlike Gatsby, but I haven't used this before. This just came out. This literally like came out like what, a month ago. So it's very new. So that's why like I had just never used it, but I would consider using this. Like Next.js is very cool in general. I just haven't tried their static options yet. Yeah, but yeah, you could check that out. But what else to know about Gatsby? The other nice thing about Gatsby, you don't need a really complicated web host. You can deploy it to any free service that allows you to host static content. So that includes GitHub. GitHub does that for free. Netlify does that for free. A site I like called Surge does that for free. Yeah, there's just a lot of options for deploying static websites, and Gatsby builds to a static website. Like the output is static, so it's really easy to host, like so simple to host. It costs you usually nothing. Yeah.
Are there any other libraries that you just really like and that are good to use? Like I know a lot of our projects are using like style components.
Style components. This one.
Yeah, is that a library?
That is a library. Yeah. So this is an example of a library. So Blueprint projects, a lot of them do use styled components. Yeah, there's so many ways to do what styled components does. The reason I did not bring that into Gatsby is did not bring that into this project is because I thought we could do everything with just plain old CSS and class names. I feel like this tends to be very useful when you're starting to create a ton of components that have a lot of reuse of styles across different things, which does apply to many of our projects. So I think that's solid. There are some things about styled components I don't necessarily like. I will save that for another time because I think I don't want to rant a little bit. But I will just say that like there's so many options. Like Gatsby actually ships with something called CSS modules, which allows you to define your CSS in a separate CSS file, but then bring in the class name as an import. I think this is a really great separation of concerns personally because the CSS is not in JavaScript. I am very mixed on whether or not we should be allowed to write JavaScript inside of CSS. I personally, like, people have different opinions. This is hotly contested in JavaScript land, but I am not convinced that we should be allowed to do that. I think CSS is just fine, and this is a great way to separate the two. So CSS modules is an example, is something you can do with Gatsby out of the box. Yeah, that's a way to do it. So styled components is a way to do it. What's another way? Just plain old CSS does the job. We did it here today. Plain old CSS works just fine. Nobody needed any of this stuff. What are some other options? Oh, I guess Gatsby has a bunch of options that they've listed here. Oh, Sass. I think Spencer actually asked me about Sass this week. Sass is an example of like adding like some adding variables to CSS. So if you don't like JavaScript inside of CSS, why not just have a whole new language inside of CSS instead? Which I have mixed opinions about as well.
It's kind of like the same like functional approach to CSS that like React does for other stuff, right?
I can't say one way or the other because I just haven't used Sass enough to say for sure. You know what I do like about Sass is the nesting stuff. I like how you can nest in Sass. Nesting is not something you can do out of the box with normal CSS. Normal CSS doesn't have nesting rules inside of rules. Styled components does, Sass does. CSS modules maybe don't. I don't know. I haven't tried that. But yeah, so there's Sass. There's Bulma. I don't know what Bulma is. You could check out Bulma.
Characters from
You could watch a 2-minute video about why you should use Bulma. Oh, sorry, what's up?
Bulma, the character from Dragon Ball.
Oh, I don't know.
The
I'm
pink
sorry. No, she has the teal hair. Blue hair. Anyway.
No, actually, I just looked it up. It looks like Bulma is actually a free open source and modern CSS framework. So I don't know what you're talking about, but I only know free open source and modern CSS framework.
Right, okay. Yeah. My bad.
Yeah, Tailwind. Oh, I've heard good things about Tailwind. I've never used this, but I've heard such good things about this. I've been meaning to try it. It has a lot of nice defaults. People say this is the better tachyons. If you've used tachyons, that's another thing. Yeah, Tailwind is the better tachyons. That's what I've heard. Rumors.
Anyone wants to say hi to my dog, Lola?
Yeah.
She's right here.
Hey doggy.
Oh my god.
Yeah, basically. Okay.
Cool. Alrighty. Well, yeah. So if y'all have any more questions, I'm happy to answer them. Over Slack or Messenger or whatever. Hopefully we get to do a part 2 of this where we use those basic hooks that I did not account for in the time today. But yeah, like I said, this is like a repeating workshop series. So if you didn't get to be in this call today or next time or whatever time, you'll still be able to join us in some other workshop format, hopefully. This is supposed to be kind of a rotating series of people that we, do these workshops with. But yeah, hope